Hey, Shalom family. Welcome to another edition of Maccabees TV. This is your brother, the priest Daniela, and as you can see, I'm right here inside the world famous Marcus Garvey Playground in Harlem. And right now, actually, where I'm standing this is where the ISUPK had their cookout a couple of weeks ago, all right? And I'm sitting here with a brother that's back on Maccabees TV by popular demand, my brother Morey Yeshaya Yisrael, aka Kashub the Danite. So welcome back to Maccabees TV, Kashub the Danite. So pretty much introduce yourself, give us a little brief history of yourself and how long you've been in Israel, and we'll take it from there.
Giving honor and praise to the Yah, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Been in the knowledge of Israel since I was 2 years old, started in a camp in New York called Kosherit under the leader Morey Yosef, may he rest in peace. After that, sat a little bit due to living convenience at a congregation called Beni Adat under the leadership there. Then went to Ashaba under the leadership of my former teacher Cohen Lewy. Then after that, went to a congregation eventually called Shema and sat under them for a little while. So that's basically the synopsis of what it goes down with that and my history as far as being in Israel. Also, without shadow of a doubt, want to give a human acknowledgement to my history teacher, Chief Simeon Ben Yehuda from Bnei Zakim. Bnei Zakim was one of the oldest and original Tanakh camps inside the United States, branching out from Brooklyn to Chicago uniformly. So that's the synopsis with that.
All right, excellent, no problem. Well, listen, let me tell the family at home, let me tell the viewers at home, when I tell you that this brother is a monster with the history, I kid you not. This brother is a monster with the history. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fall back, and I want you to go ahead and go into your presentation and let the people know exactly what it is that you're here to tell us. All right? Just freestyle. Do what you do.
Basically, wanted to talk real quick about the whole issue with the issue of people talking about the Hyksos, the Hebrews, and so forth and so on. Hyksos is a generic term, like Hispanic is a generic term, like black is a generic term. That's a term that people called other people that the people being called that did not call themselves. The term Hyksos is the Greek form of the Egyptian Hyksos sweat. Hyksos meaning shepherd kings, Hyksos sweat, said by some as Hekakasu, meaning rulers of foreign lands. So these rulers of foreign lands were not distinguished as opposed to what land they particularly had came from. Be they come from the Cashite, Mitanni, Akkadian, Babylonian, Chaldean, Hebrew, Edomite, Moabite, Libyan, Cushite, whatever type of ite was there, the Egyptians called those particular people the Hyksos sweat, with the Greeks, when they came to power in Egypt, transliterated that word into the word Hyksos. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out. Now I want to sit there and have a book here, Intro to Ancient Egypt, right, on page 53. I'm going to just read a couple of excerpts, don't want to overdo it, right? It says concerning the people that we will call the Hyksos in history, that they came into Egypt during the 11th dynasty, and this is something that happened in particular. It says to keep out from the delta. Now, as the brother's going to show you on the map, the delta is the northern part of Egypt, which they call Lower Egypt, right? To keep from the delta the continuous ways of infiltrating Asiatics from the east. Amenemhet I constructed a fortification known as the Walls of the Prince. So this right here was built by the pharaoh that was during the era of Dynasty 12 to keep out what they call the Amu, also called the Set-U. You get those terminologies when you read Egypt of the Pharaohs by Sir Alan Gardiner. And he wanted this particular pharaoh in Dynasty 12, the first ruler of Dynasty 12, to keep out the Asiatics from going into the land of Egypt. You understand? So now history will show you that there's two different ways of Asiatics that wound up coming into the land of Egypt. One being Dynasty 11, and they eventually shutting up shop, and then eventually later on, the other dynasty being Dynasty 13, when the children of Israel was exiting out, the Amalekites that came in there during the time of the 10 and Hyksos. So that right there is just a brief synopsis of what we're going to be getting into.
Now, before you go any further, let me just highlight something that you said. You said the Israelites, the children of Israel, were exiting Egypt in Dynasty number 13. I think that's important. Now, that may or may not be a part of your presentation, but I think that's extremely important because modern scholars are looking for the Israelites exiting Egypt in the 18th dynasty. And they're coming forward saying they cannot find any evidence of the Israelites exiting Egypt in dynasty number 18. And I also think that there's a lot of Israelites that don't understand what anachronisms are. And when you read Exodus, the 1st chapter, when it speaks about Ramses, that is an anachronism. Now again, I don't want you to take you off topic, but I want you to kind of just really briefly speak on that.
All right, no problem, brother. Anachronism is when, for instance, we in New York right now, right? This place right here called New York was called that by the European settlers that came in, the English. Prior to that, the Dutch who was here called it New Amsterdam, same piece of land. Now, if I were to sit there and write a book, and I were to sit there and talk about the same land we on right now and put the land of Amsterdam, that's an anachronism. Because I'm writing according to the time, that way the reader will understand what's being spoken about. That's very important. And a lot of people, not stepping on toes, but the people in the Amin Ra squad don't understand that. Like the brother Nasi was pointing out when they start to talk about Ur of Chaldea, by saying, well, in the time of Abraham, there was no place called Ur. But at the time when the scribe was writing in the book of Ezra, there was a place called Ur. So that right there has to be noted and understood. Now, to get into that, if you're into anything with Egypt, you have a place that was called Rawati. The same place later on was called Peru Nefer. The same place later on was called Pira Amses. The same place later on was called Hutaret. The same place later on was called Avaris. The same place later on was called Tanis. I mean, it just goes to show you exactly what it is. Now, to make it a little hood, the place where I grew up in as a child, you take the 2 train, get off at Newkirk, they now call those projects over there Flappers Gardens. But those who know New York know that's Vanderveer.
Right.
But they try to change the name to try to hide certain things of how the Veer was. Just to give you the same synopsis. It's done by people all the time. Now, this book right here, just going to read a couple of excerpts from the school that I work in. This right here is Oxford History of Ancient Egypt, page 171. It did go into a little bit concerning this subject matter right here, right? And here's what we read. It says, under the direction of the Middle Kingdom rulers. Now the Middle Kingdom included part of Dynasty 11, part of Dynasty 12, and that is to say also part and fully of Dynasty 13, right? Under the direction of the Middle Kingdom rulers, Egypt had its eyes open to the wider world of Nubia, Asia, and the Aegean, benefiting from the exchange of materials, products, and ideas. Now I want to sit there and get into that, because a lot of times people not to knock the Kemetic community, but they'll try to sit there and make it seem like Egypt was the be-all and all, and that they got nothing from nobody else. But yet when you read in the papyrus of Ipra, it speaks about ships not being able to go to Byblos. Byblos is next to and adjacent to the biblical land of Zidon, where the ancient Canaanites lived. So obviously they did trade with other people. When you go and you read about what they call the glory of the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, they speak about the issue of them going into the Sinai, dealing with certain things with the Cushites. Take you back into Dynasty 1. There's no way in the world you're going to say that Egypt didn't borrow from other peoples and trading and so forth and so on, because of the simple fact, brothers and sisters, that when you get into the history of it, they got what they call the Nakara, where the lions. Lions are not native to Kemet. Lions are native to Kush. So the fact that you got images of lions in Egypt showed you that they had to have some connection with some other people in trading. So let that be noted. Now, next issue, real quick, moving along. Same book, want to read part of, that is, page 174 in this. This gets into the issue of what we was talking about. This book right here, written by Ian Shaw.
And it's from where? Oxford University?
Yeah, it's written from the people in Oxford, but it's edited by a guy named Ian Shaw. And says, under the territory of Avaris. Amu was a contemporary term used to distinguish the people of Avaris from Egyptians. It was used long before the Second Intermediate Period and was still in use long after Ramses II, for instance, used it and his opponents at Kadesh in order to denote, in a general sense, the inhabitants of Syria-Palestine. Now, Syria and the ancient Egyptian, as the brother's going to show you in the picture presented, is the Khor, Khor. In the biblical term, Syria was also called the land of Aram. Now, many people, not all, but many people in the Kemetic community look at the modern Pale Arabs, the modern Pale Syrians, and then sit there and think that that's what Ramses saw, or that Merneptah saw, or that was the image that Shalmaneser III looked like. Absolutely not. The people that you see there looking very pale and very European is due to the mixture when the Ptolemies and the Seleucids came in. So you got to know history and put history in its proper context. You cannot look at the so-called modern Arabian Egyptian and sit there and think that he's not the true Egyptian, then look at the people across the Sinai and say those must be the true Hebrews. That's not dealing intelligent. All right, so let that be noted. Now to conclude with this particular part here, it says Egyptologists conventionally translate Amu as Asiatics, that is, inhabitants of Western Asia. The term Hyksos, on the other hand, derives via Greek from the Egyptian epithet Kashub, rulers of foreign, literally mountainous countries, and was applied only to the rulers of the Asiatics. It itself held no pejorative meaning except to denote a lower status than that of the Egyptian king. So now when you're trying to find people saying, oh, we're going to look for the Hyksos, when the people never called themselves that, you're looking for a dog chasing his own tail.
Right.
The people called the Hyksos never called themselves the Hyksos. The people called the Hyksos called themselves by their own names. Now, as the brother's going to show you, that right there is what you call the Jacob Baal Scarab. And it's showing you that Yaakov Baal was a ruler of Dynasty 16. Now, the Hyksos rulers in Egypt was during Dynasty 15 and Dynasty 16. And I'm not going to read it, but in this book right here, it will show you the contemporary dynasties. 15 and 16, simultaneous, as well as the same time being 14 and 17. 14 and 17th dynasty being in the southern part of Egypt by Waset, or Thebes, which the ancient Israelites referred to as the land of No. Then you got northern Egypt, ruled by the Hyksos, in a land called the Delta, or Tomeri, in the northern part. So let that be noted and understood. So, I wanted to go on to another subject before we get to the crux of what we're talking about. All right? Now, this book, once again, briefly, on page 56, I want to sit there and get into this particular subject. It says, scarabs, bearing their names, meaning that it's a little stone or a rock where somebody etched in a name. Scarabs bearing their names have been found at Kermer in the Sudan and in Palestine. Antiquities found in Crete and Western Asia testify to the widespread nature of their contacts. Now this is talking about the Hyksos. So now you're not going to find all of the Hyksos names inside of the record that you find that they say that Merneptah wrote. So what they've done, when you go into a separate book on your own time called Atlas of Ancient Egypt by Baines and Malek, you can get that in New York, Strands, take the 4 train down to Broadway, get off at
14th and Broadway,
Street
yeah.
and Union Square. Now, point is, pass the movie theater because they're showing Folly and go and get the books, all right?
Right.
And they're good quality and price. Trust me, don't depend on the college books. Them joints is talking 50 minimum used for renting. Anyway, getting back to the point of what we was talking about in history. The 15th and 16th dynasty of Egypt is that which was referred to as the Hyksos rulers of being in Egypt. The rulers being Dynasty 15, the subordinates being in Dynasty 16. So let that be noted and understood. Now, one of the things to sit there and point out, brothers and sisters, is this. When we go, brothers and sisters, into this book here, not going to use too many references. Same book here, Oxford History of Ancient Egypt, on page 480. Because a lot of times when people try to battle with the Israelites, they try to say to the Israelites, well, show us a date and give me a scarab with a date. All right, let's see about your chronology and your dates. The date of the majority of the Pharaonic period, that is to say 3000 to 664 BCE, are based mainly on ancient king lists, dated inscriptions, and astronomical records. In the New Kingdom and Third Intermediate period, the margin of likely error is about a decade. So that means you got it from when King Tut, and then you got Akhenaten, and then you got then you got Horemheb. They can sit there and say that's a 10-year gap between each of them that's not accounted for. So I need you to show me the dates that you're talking about. Then it goes on to say, but this tends to increase as we move further back in time. So that in the Old Kingdom, it might be about as many as 50 years. And in the first dynasty, Namir, Aha, so forth and so on, in the first dynasty, it might be as high as 150 years. So we're speaking about a difference, they're saying of 150 years per ruler that they just can't account for. This book is not even hitting on what they call the Scorpion dynasty, because a lot of times they don't even say that they even can attest to the knowledge of that. As the brother is showing you, this is the Namir palette of him killing the Asiatics in the land of Egypt. So as the brother Nasi, when he was debating back in 2013 and showed the Asiatic presence from the dynasties before the first dynasty of Egypt, this is how Namir is shown killing them, because they had to be there for him to have an image of him killing them. That's just logic. So I need you to show me the dates that you're talking about. Let's move on. When the dates for 2 or more dynasties overlap, principally in the second and third intermediate periods, this is because their rule was accepted in different parts of the country. When you read the record of Eusebius, he tells you that there were certain rulers of Egypt ruling at the same time. But see, when Manetho did what he said, what it said of him to have done for Ptolemy Philadelphus II, when he gave his list, he didn't give the list chronological order.
Right, he gave it sequentially.
He gave it sequentially.
Right.
So now it looks like one king under another king under another king.
Not.
Whereas when you go after the era of Solomon and the kingdom split, you had Jeroboam and Rehoboam. And then while Rehoboam was there, you got Jeroboam's son on the throne. Then Rehoboam's son was Abijah. Then you had Elah, Timmy, Zimri, Omri, while Abijah, then Asa was ruling, all within that same timeline. So the timeline between the chronological kings of Israel and Judah is not done to try to make Israel seem further than what it was. You understand? When you read in Genesis chapter 12, verse 6, and it says, when Abraham went to the land of Canaan and the Canaanite was there, he didn't go there and say, oh, look, I discovered something. No, the house of Israel acknowledged that there was a world outside of their world. Kemetic, for the most part, tried to sit there and hide that there was a world outside of theirs. That is why, not jumping the gun in the presentation, it was easy for the Assyrians and the Cushites and the Libyans and the Babylonians to defeat them, because you wasn't up on the modern warfare. You stayed too secluded. You did basically what unfortunately King Saul did when he got defeated by the Philistines. What's the first thing David said after that? Teach the men of Judah the bow and arrow, because these Philistines is beating our behind. It's time to, as sisters tell us, black man, step your game up. See how history coincides with reality? Let's move on. It goes on to say, when the dates of 2 or more dynasties overlap, this is because their rule is accepted in different parts of the country. Overlapping dates for reigns within dynasties usually indicate co-regencies, a period when a king and his successor ruled simultaneously. That happened with Mentuhotep III and the guy Amenhotep I. When there are apparent gaps in the chronology, particularly at the end of dynasties, this is usually because there are 1 or 2 extremely poor documented rulers whose regnal dates are unknown or difficult to access. So, in light of that, now when you're sitting up there and you're giving your chronology of the kings, right? Now, hopefully this will show clear, because I want to sit there and show something. This right here is the list of the kings of Egypt. Now we're going to go and look and see. This right here is Dynasty 13 in the list. How many of them got a date there? Only Sobekotep IV. Rest of them, dates is unknown. But you want me to give you a date according to the biblical timeline about when this papyrus and that one was written. You need to come with better sources. So let that be noted. Then we see in Dynasty, the end of 14, Al-Kare, and the list then says others. So as is read in the book, certain kings were not listed. That's in Dynasty 14. Then we got The last 4 kings listed in Dynasty 16 with the Hyksos. Yaakov Baal, Yaakov Am, Yoam, Amu, and others. So how you got 3 different lists, Dynasty 14, Dynasty 16, and the other one, sending up there talking about there's other rulers that's not even listed. And then you got Dynasty 17, where they only got 2 dates given for it, but you bringing on the Israelites to ask us for a date. You need to get your own dates together. That's what you need to do.
This is why we put Kemet on trial. This is why we did it. Because these guys in the so-called conscious community, especially those that prefer to call themselves dealing with Kemetic science, they don't deal with this information. They don't deal with the flaws in the Egyptian information. But of course, we weren't able to bring out everything we wanted to bring out at that debate. And even with the information that was brought out, they've yet to answer it. As a matter of fact, the information that Nasi brought out in 2013, they've yet to really thoroughly answer that.
Now, the brother Nasi, very good friend of mine, he spoke about co-regencies in ancient Egypt. Now I would like to add on to what he was saying. There were 32 dynasties in Egypt, man. 7 of which was not native to Egypt, man. 15 Hyksos, 16 Hyksos, 22 the Libyans, what the Egyptians called the people of Tehanu. Then you got Dynasty 25, Ethiopians or the Cushites. Then you got Dynasty 27. This is when you get Artaxerxes and Darius and Cambyses. Dynasty 27 is the Persians. Then you had Egypt coming up as their own kingdom in Dynasty 28, but by then the prophecy of Ezekiel 29 was coming to pass when it says Egypt will come back but shall be a base kingdom, it shall not rule over the nations. So Dynasty 28, 29, and 30, and then you got it to where Dynasty 31 is again dealing with the Persians. Then when Darius Commodus III is defeated by Alexander, then you got Alexander pictured with the Egyptian god Amun and the Egyptian walls. So let me understand this, and brothers and sisters, this is probably said in fire, probably said in heat, but it's not to sit there and be disrespectful. Read the record of Tacitus. I deliberately didn't bring it because I ain't want to get sidetracked. But my point is, read the record of Tacitus, right? He said that when the Israelites was confronted by the army of Caligula to put Caligula's image inside the temple, Caligula who ruled from 37 to 41 AD, the Israelites was, nah man, we rather fight. We ain't putting the image of that sodomite inside of our temple. Yeah, we are the Hasmoneans, yeah, we going through it right now, but certain things we're not doing. When Pompey wanted his image put in, the Israelites was like, no. And then when Pompey wound up getting assassinated in the land of Egypt, Israelites was happy about that. So that right there is not to get sidetracked, but just talk about how you got an image of Alexander inside the walls of Egypt, but you're supposed to be pro-black. Kemet, ancient Egypt, was not pro-black. Let that be understood. Kemet was pro-Kemet. Kemet was not pro-black. This is why when Alexander was an assistance to them, you can go in your own time and read a book entitled Vanished Negro Civilizations by J.C. DeGraff. In his book, he speaks about how the Egyptians praised Alexander for defeating the Persians, because the Persians, hands down, were tyrants. You understand? So that's how it was. They was more political than national. So let that be noted and understood. Now, how do you have like these Kemetic brothers is crazy? We got 32 dynasties, and then 7 of them are not even black. Or pardon me, 7 of them not even native Egyptian. And then 1 of the 7 is not even black. You understand what I'm saying? Ptolemies, from Ptolemy Soda, Ptolemy Philadelphus II, all the way to Ptolemy the 15th is Caucasians, man. That's the people of Greece, man. That's the people of Javan, man. That's the people that the Most High said that he will bend Judah and sit there and raise up the sons of Judah against the sons of Javan. So while the Egyptians got images of them on their walls, the Israelites, on the other hand, was fighting them, man. The Israelites was fighting Seleucus III. They was fighting Antiochus VII. They was fighting Antiochus IV. This is when you get the issue of Hanukkah coming in. When the Maccabees retook what the Greeks stole from them, and they did Chanukah, the Hebrew word meaning for rededication, when they rededicated the temple. Israelites, namely the Levites and Judites and Benjamin, the southern kingdom that was still there, was about getting their name on that map and representing for their people. Go to 1 Maccabees 4, verse 11. May the Most High strengthen us and the nation see that there's one Savior in Israel. So, let that be noted. See, the Kemetic stuff, people been exposed for trying to say something and calling on the wrong Egyptian god or goddess. Well, no, that's not that god for that. That's not that goddess for that. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Shema Israel, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. Hear, O Israel, Yah our God, Yah is one. We can't make that mistake in Israel or calling on a different one. Because see, Israel has one. But as the brothers in Chicago, the brothers who are Israelites out there pointed out, every time another civilization came around Egypt, Egyptians took their gods and made it in Egyptian form. This is how you find men, the Egyptian erect penis, which they try to sit there and say is a sign of fertility. That concept is against the culture of Israel, man. Now, I want to talk very briefly before we get back into history. Because they want to sit there and say that the Torah and the principles that's in the Torah came up out of the culture of Kemet or Egypt. Brother, can you point the camera downward for a minute? You see this? This is called Adama, ground. What color is that, bro? Brown, right? This is what Adam, the man, was made from. So he ain't look like my shirt. He was either me or darker, okay? So let that be noted and understood, all right? So let that please be noted and understood. Adam means human or man or mortal. He was taken from the Adama. Adama is the feminine principle for the word for ground. So that would indirectly be his maternal aspect. Now, Eve, or said in Hebrew as Kawa, means life. And she was not taken from the rib, because a man and a woman have the exact same number of ribs. She was taken from the Hebrew understanding Zaleh, which means his side. She was taken from his side. Why do you think women like to be on the side of men and be hugged and held and so forth? Because that's part of being that helpmate. Women don't want to sit there, generally speaking, and be pushed in the front. Girl, you handle everything. And they don't want to be pushed all the way in the back. Like, girl, I don't want nobody knowing you, I'm with you. So the point I'm saying, generally speaking, is she is the helpmate. And Eve, or Kawa, was called the mother of all living. When you go to the book of Numbers, chapter 16, verse 29 and verse 32, it says, if the Most High do a new thing and the earth open her mouth. Moses, or Moshe, the prophet, knew that the earth is part of the feminine principle. And then it says, Watif taka aretz, and the earth she opened at piha, her mouth. Why? And it said that she swallowed up the inhabitants. You understand? Very, very important to let that be noted. Earth in the Hebrew culture is understood in the feminine principle. In Egyptian, Jeb or Jeb, which is earth, is represented in the masculine. And if you don't understand that, go to the pyramid text 308. So how do you have earth, which some call Mother Earth, and what they say is supposed to be a principle of black civilization, represented in the masculine principle as Jeb, when all cultures, including the Hebrews, knew that feminine and earth has a linkage. You put your seed in the earth. Right. You see the tree there, somebody planted that seed. You get whatever the seed was. You put your seed in a woman, it's the seed whatever you put, whatever seed it was. You don't put your seed in a woman and get whatever the woman was. What are people talking about that a woman can make herself pregnant with a Bartholin gland? Right. That's wickedness, man. And not to sound disrespectful, you're gonna have elders, children around me watching this, but no matter what a female does to pleasure herself, that's never gonna cause a pregnancy. So let that be noted and understood. There was an order already that the Most High God has made. Right. What has happened, it seems, in the conscious community, in some cases, the black man's been down so long, black men unfortunately been so deadbeats for so long, we think that's the normal thing. So now we teaching sisters, oh, you don't need me to have the baby, you can sit there and have the baby by yourself. Right. After all, didn't your grandmother and your mother raise sons by herself? So what do you need me for? This is a psychology that many of our people have imbibed, and it's sad. It's not good. The Hebrew culture, it says in Amos 7 verse 17, as part of the curses, thy men shall be slain in the street, and thy wife shall be a harlot. That's a bad thing. But they'll try to sit there and flip it around like this is a goddess, she can sleep with whoever she wants. No, not a good, clean way to live. Okay, so now, We dealing, this is the 6th day of the week, which they call Friday, right? A couple hours is going to be the Shabbat. As stated before on Maccabees TV, I have yet to hear one say Shabbat Hotep. And you're not going to hear it said because it's not part of the people of Kemet. If you come from one west and they say Shabbat Shalom, if you come from Hashaba like me and they say Shabbat Shalom, we're still saying Sabbath of peace. You are not going to find them saying Shabbat Hotep because it's not part of that culture. If you can show me, as stated, where the Sabbath, where Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread is inside of Egyptian records, please do so. If you can show me the Feast of Sekhmet in the Torah, and the Nebi'im, or the Ketubim, or that's to say the Tanakh, or in the Gospels for that, or in even the letters of Paul, or in Revelation, even in the New Testament, if you can show me where that's there, please sit there and do so. Or in the Apocrypha, if you can show me where they had the Feast of Sekhmet. Because when the house of Israel, unfortunately, was worshiping, they say, Hathor, the Egyptian goddess, in Exodus chapter 32, they try to sit there in the Kemetic community and say, see, the Israelites got it from the Egyptians. Yeah, they did. But look at what the Torah says. Israel left as a derision to their enemies. And it says that their leader, Moshe or Moses, took it, grinded it, and made the people drink it. So that shows you what Moses thought about Hathor. All right, so let that be noted and understood. Now, I want to go back real quick, if we will, right? Into the history aspect. Now, this book right here, Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in ancient times. Now, this right here on page 100, very interesting. They have this in colleges too, by the way. It says this: the true identity of the Hyksos can now easily be ascertained through the examination of two bodies of evidence, archaeological and linguistic. We shall have occasion below to look more closely at the archaeological record, but suffice it to say, for the present, that recent excavations at such Hyksos sites, such as Tel El Dab'a and Tel El Makuska, have revealed an intrusive culture whose ceramic and artifactual content differs not at all from the culture contemporary Middle Bronze Age Palestine and Phoenician. So the Phoenician people and the Palestinian people were part of the Hyksos that was in the land of Egypt. That's the point in reading this aspect right here. Point being, you have some people online trying to connect the Hyksos to the Greeks. No. Trying to connect the Hyksos to the Khazars. No. Because when the Hyksos, and we're going to conclude with the Hyksos now and get into Israel now. When the Hyksos went vanquished out of the land of Egypt by Amos in Dynasty 18, and then really made solid by Thutmose III, that is, in Dynasty 18. They made sure to the best of their ability to have it to where they was kept in the land of Sharuhen, in the land of Canaan. The Khazars were a Turkish people. Sharuhen later on became part of the tribe of the land of Simeon. Simeon was absorbed in the land of the tribe of Judah. The Khazars were a people of Turkish stock. That's not the people of Judah. And Arthur Koestler in his book gets into that. And he wasn't schizophrenic. He did not commit suicide. But let's continue on, all right? Want to sit there and get into this particular aspect, if you will. I have a secular reference. Now we're going to get more into the issue of Hebrew and so forth and so on. It says Biblical Archaeology and Focus. Page 259. And here is what we read. It says this: the numerous references to the activity of the Habiru, Habiru, as a disruptive social element in Canaan comprise a facet of the Amarna letters that has received considerable scholarly attention. The name varies from, check this out now, Sagaz in the Sumerian language to Habiru, Hapiru, Apiru, Abiru, and Akkadian. References to the class of people designated by the term have been found in texts ranging back into the early Bronze Age from such diverse sites as Mari, Haran, Hattusas, Ugarit, Alalak, and Amarna. These cover a geographical area that stretches the length and breadth of the ancient Near East. So the whole world was not about Kemet. So this is talking about the people that we're speaking now. And for those who might be seeing a picture, don't say, oh, you're talking about Akhenaten and Nefertari. No, I'm talking about the Habiru. Read. Everything ain't about the pictures. Okay? And right here it says this. There can be little doubt that the name Hebrew derives from the term, just as certain as the evidence that throughout its history, the word denoted a social class rather than an ethnic group. Now, among the Hebrews, you had the Edomites, the Moabites,
Right.
the Ammonites, the Moabites as stated in the Israelites, the Midianites as well, Ishmael as well. Now, one of the things to point out, the word Hebrew, in Hebrew, it comes from the Hebrew word abar, which means to cross over. When you read about the ancestry of Abraham, you read about Eber, which the Kemetic line wound up maintaining where you get that Hebrew word from. When it was transliterated to the records of the Sumerians in the cuneiform, it is pronounced as Sagaz. And then by the time you get to where the Akkadian is, as the book pointed out, you get the Abiru and the Kabiru. Now, as the brother's pointing out, in the letter right here, this is the Hebrew letter Ayin, said by some who say that Hebrew has no vowels, as the Hebrew letter I. And this is the letter that a lot of times has been transliterated from this letter to the other Hebrew letter that the brother is showing, the Hebrew letter Ket, said as Ka by some. Because Kabiru and Hebrew have a connection. But you have to know when they refer to as metathesis, when they transform and transliterate a language from one thing to the next. Tiglath-Pileser is called that in the scriptures. His Assyrian name was a whole nother aspect. So let that be noted and understood. All right? Now, to sit there and decimate while we got the time, one of the biggest myths that they try to say is that, oh, he brought the Bible out, the book that you're not supposed to use in scholarly debates, right?
Right.
Supposedly. All right. It starts off by saying in the beginning. It starts off in another part by saying in the days of. So it shows history. Now to some of the brothers, not all, but to some in the Morris science, who say that the Bible is not a history book because it doesn't give a date. You have to begin to sit there and know and understand. The Egyptian records don't give a date. The cuneiform records don't give a date. The Ethiopian records don't give a date. So what they use is what is referred to as a regnal dating system, where in modern times they use the modern calendar and then applied it to the ancient calendar according to what they was able to understand. This is why you find, what's the guy's name, Amos? Some say he was born in 1580 BCE, and some say he was born in 1539 BCE, which is a difference of 41 years. But Amos only lived to be 35. But yet nobody argues why you got a 40-year gap for the birth of a man that only lived to be 35 years old. But the Bible is supposed to not be in a history book. Show you right. Let's go, brothers and sisters, to the book of Exodus chapter 1. Alright, so we can gain an understanding. Alright? Says this. Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, behold the son. Simeon, hearing. Levi, join. Yehuda, the Most High's praise. Issachar, there is a reward. Zebulun, habitation. Benjamin, son of the right side. Dan, judge. Naphtali, my contention. Gad, fortune. Asher, happiness. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob was 70 souls. For Joseph, adding or increasing, was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, which did not know Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Now remember that in verse 9, that the Egyptians, according to the Bible now, the book that you're supposed to not use as a historical reference, is saying that the children of Israel are more and mightier than the Egyptians. Now, let's go back to another Radford who's respected in archaeological situations. And read page 101 and remember Exodus 1 verse 9. So we can gain an understanding, right? Here is what we read. It says the following. The Brooklyn Museum Papyrus. And as the brother is showing, this is a picture of the Brooklyn Museum Papyrus. We went over this in Maccabees TV before with the situation about Seneptisi and the slaves that she had. So we don't want to be redundant. We want to keep giving fresh info. All right? The Brooklyn Museum Papyrus and other brief notices passed in the last chapter demonstrate clearly the presence in Egypt during the 12th and 13th dynasties, the Middle Kingdom, before 18th, right? Of a sizable Asiatic population of servile status, presumably brought back as a result of foreign wars. Although there is nothing to suggest that this population was any larger in the Eastern Delta than elsewhere, it is not unreasonable to suppose that with the gradual weakening of the royal authority, remember, a king of Egypt fell, he died, and another king came up. The royal authorities weakening, the Delta defenses were allowed to lapse, and groups of transhumans found it easy to cross the frontier and settle in Lower Egypt. Although the next step in the argument is largely of inference, one can be led to believe that in time the Asiatic population in the Eastern Delta grew to exceed in number the native Egyptian stock. So right here we see from a scholar who is saying unbiased information that it is generally to be supposed that with the gradual weakening that the Asiatic population grew to exceed the number of the native Egyptian stock. Now, the brother is showing you pictures of the Asiatics called the Amu. They look like me and him. All right, so let that be noted and understood. Let's go back, if we will, to the book of Exodus, right? So we can gain an understanding concerning this kind of subject. Now, I want to briefly say that you have some clowns, not to sound disrespectful, oh, well, we don't deal with the Hyksos were shepherd kings. But the brother's showing you a picture, all the brothers and sisters praise in Africa and want to snap on some Israelites because some Israelites say, you know what, Africa? Here we see pictures of the Fulani people dealing as herdsmen, as shepherds. When you read Alex Haley's book entitled Roots, Kunta, while in Virginia, was saying the white man is stupid for having the Fulani people picking up straw and hay when everybody know the Fulani were good as herdsmen. When you go to the book of Numbers chapter 32 and chapter 33, you read about the tribe of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh being good herdsmen. You see the terminology that they use for some of the Hyksos as being herdsmen. So the cultures was different, man. Stop trying to mesh everything together to try to hide the identity of the true Hebrews, man. Israel's going to rise regardless. So let that be noted and understood. Now, going to keep the scriptures out, put 2 books down, because we're already done with that aspect, and get into another book that was made into a TV show back in the 1990s. This book here is called Pharaohs and Kings, right? And he dates the Exodus out of Egypt to Dynasty 13, as does David Down. as does Sir Alan Gardiner. Like a brother named Sha'al, a very good friend of mine, said, why is it that none of the Egyptians, when the Septuagint was being written, contest what the Israelites was writing? Why didn't none of the Egyptians sit there and say, hey, Ptolemy, hey, they writing lies, man. Don't let them Hebrews sit there and tell you that. How come none of them said that? And don't think they wouldn't, because when they tried to build the second temple, the original people of Persia was like, yo, Darius, you gotta stop that. So, people will make a petition against the house of Israel. And if you don't think that's a reality, when the brothers and sisters and the elders, my elders to me, being born in the time after the 1970s, just leaving it at that. When Ben Ami and them went over to the land of Israel and Damona, you had some of the people that was in the land of Israel, them Hamites that was still there, sitting up there making petitions saying, them blacks that came out of America need not be over here. So don't deny, and if you don't think that's true, I got what I just said from a book called The Forgotten Jews of Ethiopia, the so-called philosophers, written by a guy. His name is forgot his name. I'm gonna call the brother later on and have him type in the name in the video. But I forgot the name right now. All right, so let that be noted. Last of the Ethiopian philosophers, Louis Rappaport. Check that book out. That's where I got that source from just now. Now, in this book right here, Pharaohs and Kings, we're going to go to page with the time concluding, right? 173. Now, I made a joke before with some, no, I was tripping. 273, sorry. I made a joke before with some brothers, and there's no disrespect intended to women. And please don't take this the wrong way. When I didn't want to deal with the nag, I started studying a whole lot. And treated it like sisters, women. Because see, this one refers you to this one. And this one refers you to this one. You see? And they're beautiful. And they don't complain if you talk to their friends. They actually refer you to their friends. I know I'm saying it as a joke, but getting back into something more serious. Alright. What we're about to read is evidence of how the fact that the Exodus happened Dynasty 13 and not Dynasty 18. It says in chapter 12 of this, in part, no Israelite settlement has ever been found in the 19th dynasty occupational levels where the Orthodox chronology predicted its stratigraphical location. On the other hand, dig down below the 19th dynasty capital and you will reach the city of Avaris, the vast majority of the population of which was Asiatic. So now, who is to deny that the Israelites was there when the Asiatic population in Egypt was not identified in Egyptian records by a particular name? Well, you can't say they were the Israelites. Well, the Israelite records say it was there. The Egyptian record doesn't say the Israelites wasn't there.
I mean, that's just common sense, man. You know, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's just common sense. It's like now you got these dudes with these Kemetic names, right? But if somebody was to read about them 100 years from now, they're going to go by their slave name. You see what I'm saying? Somebody 100 years from now is going to know them by their slave name because their Kemetic name that they go by is not their born name. It's the same thing with us. Even though we know that we're the Israelites, the records don't call us Israelites. You see what I'm saying? The records call us African Americans. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. It's just common sense, man. Your captors never call you by your name. They give you the name that they want to give you. It's common sense.
Right.
Like the so-called white man called the Native Americans, he called them Indians. They didn't call themselves Indians. That's the name he gave them.
Right. True. True. Now in the same book, it says, the initial influx of Asiatics into the Katana appears to have been during the late 12th dynasty, during the late 12th dynasty, with the first settlement concentrated at the site of Tel and Daba, later to become the central core of the city of Avaris. The Asiatic occupation ended with the expulsion of the 15th dynasty Hyksos rulers of Avaris by Amos at the beginning of the New Kingdom. Bitek, which is one of their archaeologists, has identified several major occupational levels during that period, indicating a long time interval between the arrival and departure of the foreigners. Now, the arrival and departure of the foreigners. Let that noted and understood. Remember we was talking, right, about Dynasty 12 and Dynasty 13 and the Middle Kingdom and so forth and so on. There's a record, as we went over in Maccabees TV before, concerning a thing called the Imperial Papyrus. We also spoke about the Brooklyn Papyrus, not the medical Brooklyn Papyrus, but rather the Brooklyn Papyrus 35.1446. That papyrus holds the name, and I'm going to show a picture of it, as the brother is showing right now as well. On this right here is a picture of it right here, so we can sit there and see it. We see the two things that are in a rectangular. It denotes, brothers and sisters, the name of Shifra and the name of Asher. Shifra is also written about in Exodus chapter 1 verse 15 and 16. She's one of the midwives. Asher is the only recorded tribesman of Israel to actually have a daughter named Iska. When you get your linguistics up in Hebrew, and then when you sit there and see what this is talking about, this is speaking partly about the Hebrews that were enslaved under a lady named Seneptisi, and she made her plea to Sobekotep III. We went over this before, and this is why a lot of times they don't want to sit there and speak about this particular aspect. Why? Because it denounces what they're saying. This is from an Egyptian source itself. Now, the brother is showing a picture of the Imperial Papyrus. Now, anybody familiar with that wants to sit there and say, prior to that, for those who know where I'm going, well, Egyptians, you know, were very careful with their records and so forth and so on, right? So why do you see in the Imperial Papyrus a line that says scribes are killed and their writings are taken away? Why were they killing their scribes? Why were they taking their writings away? So you want to sit there and snap on this, talking about, oh, somebody put that together and then gave it to you. But Champollion and company, who were French, while black people were being enslaved in America, deciphered the Metuneta. And later on, some of the other people, while black people were enslaved, deciphered the hieroglyphs and deciphered the hieratic and the demotic. So I ask you this. According to some saying, oh, y'all Israelites, y'all biased because Champollion was taught by black men in Egypt. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you something. Was that black man a Sambo or a brother? Because any black man who knows what the French was into across the water, either he was ignorant of what the army of Napoleon, who first went into Egypt, was about and what they was into doing. That's the same dude, Napoleon, who defecated, we want to keep the language clean because we got children watching, who defecated onto Saint Overture, who was the freedom fighter for our brothers and sisters in the island of Haiti, which was the first free black people in the Western Hemisphere, 1803, 1804, one of those years. Now, the French ran back to France from there, ran back to Louisiana and ran back across, stopping in Philadelphia, picking up black people as slaves and then going into Canada. And if you doubt that, there's a book called The Slave Trade by Hugh Thomas that explains what I just said. Now, getting back into the situation of what we was talking about. The island of Guadeloupe still had black people as slaves, while Champollion was doing his thing. Champollion died in the 1830s or the 1840s. black people were still enslaved by the same nationality as Champollion, the French, and the island of Guadeloupe, or Guadeloupe, pardon me if I mispronounced it. So, I have to ask, if this so-called black man who supposedly taught Champollion is, you can't teach none of the people, the Nuba or the Nubians? Brothers and sisters, there was no black man that taught Champollion the mental net. That's just a ploy to sit there and have to realize that the Rosetta Stone that was found by Napoleon and company has a great deal of Greek and French understanding, because they said, wow, this is Egyptian, this side here is Greek, so they assumed that it had to be saying the same thing. And then they using what they understood as Greek to try to decipher hieroglyphs, then hieratic, then demotic. This is why the definitions that Budge has differs than the definitions that Sir Allen Gardiner has. Whether you speak Shalamim Hebrew and I say Shalom Ak, or if you speak Lashawan Kwadash and say Shalom Ak or Shalom Ak, if I'm saying Yehuda or Yahawada, I'm still talking about Judah. If I'm saying Shabbat, it's still Shabbat regardless.
Right.
If I'm saying Yisrael and you say Yashra'ala, we both know what we're saying. But to date, I have yet been able to see, and it's not that I'm the one who sees all, somebody being able to go back and forth in what they call the Mantuneta. You know why? Because they're still going into that. See, I want to sit there and I hope this message gets out there to some people. Not all black people come from Kemet. Not all black people come from the Nile Valley civilization. The brother is showing pictures of Cushites. They're not from Metunet. They're not from the people of Kemet. They are a different people. And just as you explained before on Maccabees TV, what some people got to do is play hopscotch and jump from one level, then to the next level, then to the next level, in order to sit there and all evade to dealing with the Most High King. That's basically where it boils down to at. Now, in concluding, done with the books, hopefully it was understood. If there's any questions, open for constructive criticism, and I would state more in depth where my sources came from if it's inquired about. Now, one of the things to conclude with is this. The whole concept of the Ascent of Soil Society, right, started in 1973. Israelites been saying they were Israelites since the 1950s. The camp that I spoke about, an Old Testament camp out of Chicago called B'nai Zakim, started in 1952. That's 4 years before my father was on this earth. May my dad rest in peace. You understand what I'm saying? So Israelites date prior to that. So we may have to sit back and ask, with all of the stuff being coming out with these Kemet brothers like Ray Higgins talking about he's now with the police department. Then you got Polite recorded as saying that he likes the police. Who set these individuals up to sit there and try to come back against the house of Israel? The Jewish man. Because see, when Ben Ami and them went over to the land of Israel and tore up their passports and was saying, I'm back home, I'm not going back to hell. Hell meaning Chicago, hell meaning Brooklyn, New York, hell meaning Detroit. You understand? And they settled in there in 1969 and then again in 1971. They had to create something to try to throw our people off from the truth. Because as they said in the debate February 8th, the movement with the elder, may he rest in peace now, Ben Ami, is the only successful black movement out of America to go to another land and stay there. Not a trip and then go back to work Monday. We're talking about going and staying there and having families and numbering over 2,000 in there. This is what we're talking about. Ashra Kwesi never has succeeded in that. Amun-Re has not blessed him like Yah Elohim has blessed the house of Israel. You understand? So it may seem harsh, it may seem cold, but at the same token, you can't keep on trying to sit there and present these goons, coons, and clowns to come against the house of Israel and expect us to not sit there and respond back. When this type of subject is brought up, some people, not to be sexist, like some of the sisters or women may say, well, y'all shouldn't be like that, and you know, we all need peace. Nobody was saying peace needed to be when Dr. York was talking against Israel. when Ben Ami and when Dr. York and Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben and Ashra Kwesi and all these other people were speaking against the house of Israel. When Chancellor Williams wrote that lie in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, page 337, talking about the Jews of today are the same color as they were back then as white, that man is out of his mind. Because when you go to Anachronisms by Godfrey Higgins, and when you go into the record that you read in J.A. Rogers, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, page 14, the Jews were black. And when that comes out, then all of a sudden, oh, we don't know if they existed. They don't know if they existed when they was black. Nobody, how come Polite ain't challenging a white Jewish man? Like brother from ISUPK used to sit there and bang on them in the street, talking about Judas black to the ground, and y'all not the real ones. So with that, say thank you for the time. There will be a part 2. We're going to set the date up, so instead of just talking about the Kemetic theme, the next time, most I willing, brother and I meet, we're going to talk more about the Israelite history in depth, from the Assyrian era right down to being in the hoods of America, according to references. Shalom.
Right. Let me ask you a quick question before you go. Let me close out with one quick question before you go, because this seems to be a recurring theme with the Kemetic guys. So I might as well just ask the question again, because I don't have you on camera really answering this question. Where are the bodies? If all these prophets existed, where are their bodies?
Where are their bodies? To answer that, went over that before. It is not the Hebrew custom to sit there and dig up the bodies. Now, in the Hebrew scriptures, when you go to Jeremiah chapter 8, it tells you in the scriptures what the Most High will allow the nation to do, where he said he would dig up the bones of the kings of Judah and of the prophets and of the priests and spread them out before the sun that they worship. So it tells you in the scriptures what happened to the bodies of the Israelites. It was covered over. And then it was dug up prior to that. When you go, for instance, in Josephus, when they actually speak about the Romans digging it up. So that right there just goes to show you exactly what happened with that. Plus, if they were to show it and let it be seen now, and it turns into the Negro haploid, you know they ain't gonna want to show that.
Right. But you know, let me just close out by saying this, right? It's a really stupid question. Without even having to go too deep, just think about it. Would they apply the same standard of having all the bodies of their leaders all along the Nile Valley? But when it comes to the Israelites, we have to produce every body of every prophet to prove they exist, but they don't have that standard they don't give that standard to everybody else along the Nile Valley. It just shows you how stupid that the people that follow Kemet or Kemetic science are, because they mummified their bodies. That's why you have those bodies preserved, but you will not find that along the rest of the Nile Valley. That's a fact. All right?
All right.
So with that, it was good to have the brother Kashub, the Danite, back on, and we look forward to future interviews. Is there anybody that you want to shout out? Anybody you want to?
Well, first and foremost, giving due honor and respect to Yah, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. On a human level, may my mother who taught me this great knowledge rest in peace. Want to give a shout out to my 2 younger sisters. Want to give a shout out, much respect. Brother Nasi Yashubel, the brothers from AOC, the brothers from the Lions of Israel, the brothers from Bishpaka Drummers. Y'all brothers know who you are, who be playing on them drums on them trains, man. Y'all my peoples for life. You know what this is? So that's basically who I want to give a shout out to on that aspect. Shalom.
All right, shalom, brother.